Did you know that I have been creating dice content for almost 3 years now? It's crazy to think about it because I do feel like I picked up a bottle of resin and a terrible mold from wish.com just the other day. But in January, it will be 3 years. And I honestly think it's wild that my journey has brought me to this point. And I want to say thank you to so many of you for being here for so much of that journey. It's actually crazy to me how many of you have been invested in this. While scouring my brain for content ideas for YouTube over the past week, because my daughter has been sick with the flu and I have just been sitting beside her because I can't go more than 4 feet from her when she is ill, it occurred to me that I don't have any of my dice content anywhere else except for my main short form platform. And then, of course, I do have some content elsewhere, but I don't have like a catalog of all of the dice videos and dice content I've made, particularly the ones that I am the most proud of or the series that you all have been the most interested in. So I thought it would be fun on Thursdays to start doing a Throwback Thursday segment where I edit together some of my short form content and I can start sort of compiling it based on type, I guess, category. I don't know. My most popular dice series to date was my Greek mythology collection, so I thought that would be a great place to start. It is a very extensive collection, so we're not going to do the entire thing in this video, but we're going to do a nice little chunk of it. And to try to freshen this all up for you, I have added new audio and voiceovers talking a little bit more in depth about the history of the Greek mythological gods, I suppose, that I'm making the dice about, and then also a little bit more about my process in making all of the dice. In this first video, you're going to see the dice pours and the raw reveals, but I won't have the finished dice reveal until the last video on this series, so you'll have to wait to see them inked up until I get through all of the Greek mythology collection. Just because who would I be if I don't make you wait? Without further ado, I hope you enjoy watching my Greek mythology collection. Interested in Greek mythology? Well, you've come to the right place. My next dice collection will be inspired by the Greek gods, and I'm starting with, surprise, not Artemis, but Poseidon. I started with a chunky blue and green mylar before laying down a layer of blue translucent resin with a little bit of blue and gold foil. A darker blue transparent resin was layered on top of that before I mixed up an opaque white and did some swirls directly into the resin. I'm hopeful this will give a little bit of a cresting wave effect. For my final layer, I tried to add a little bit of green to the blue to give it a little bit more of a greenish tint, but I'm not sure if it really made a difference. Demolding this Poseidon dice set, the first thing I noticed is that that green didn't really translate at all. It's just a blue mylar sparkly set. You can see the swirls of white though, which I was very pleased to see. It does feel like an ocean set of dice. I don't feel like the lack of green diminished that effect at all. It just wasn't exactly 100% what I was hoping for. That being said, you definitely get a little bit of green in the mylar, and overall I was really happy with how this turned out and happy with my very first Greek mythology dice set. For my second dice pour inspired by the Greek gods, I decided to go with Hera. Hera is the goddess of family, marriage, and lesser known, but she is a goddess of childbirth. She's both sister and wife to Zeus, which makes her sort of like the queen of the gods. Because of that, I tinted this resin gold before adding gold flake and a mylar that reminded me of diamonds. I poured it directly into the mold where I had dropped a little bit of red alcohol ink into it, trying to do something to symbolize the childbirth aspect of this pour, but I think I used way too much red, and as you can see here in the reveal, I definitely did. The red sort of took over everything else. It's still a lovely set of dice, but I did re-pour this. I promise you will get to see the redo of the Hera set. My Aphrodite dice pour was basically doomed from the start. I spent 10 minutes trying to shove this angel hair into the mold before finally knocking my resin all over the place. After an additional 5 minutes, I finally got the angel hair into the mold and added a sparkly, glittery base to help keep it from popping back out of the mold. I used a blue mica powder that's actually called Aphrodite, and then I added some gold flakes and a little bit of pink into the mold. I actually wasn't happy with the amount of pink that was in there, so I dropped some directly into the mold slots before swirling in some white and then eventually adding the blue on top, which I also just swirled in there, but the blue also wasn't heavy enough, so I had to add more mica powder. I did eventually get everything to the color and consistency I wanted. I gently swirled everything together, trying to make sure all the air bubbles escaped out of that angel hair, and then I topped it all off with a little more clear, translucent resin, but I had to scrape because I didn't have much resin left over because I knocked it all over the place. The Aphrodite dice set was particularly heartbreaking because I set out to make the most beautiful set of dice I've ever made, and I achieved that goal. But unfortunately, you see all these surface bubbles? This is because the resin was already curing for too long before I got it into the pressure pot. There's another one here on the corner of the D20, and they're just kind of riddled throughout all of the dice. When the resin goes far beyond its pot life, like before you get it in the pressure pot, there's nothing you can really do about some of these bubbles. Look at this up close of the D12 though. It's the only dice that came out flawless. I'm so sad, but I'm gonna be keeping these for myself, and we're gonna try Aphrodite again. For my repour of the Aphrodite dice set, you can see I added the angel hair before I mixed the resin this time, because it did still take about 15 minutes. Once it was in the mold, I added resin and pushed all the angel hair back down before mixing up that beautiful Aphrodite blue and some gold foil. I scooped the gold foil into each slot in the mold to make sure none of them were forgotten, before mixing in a little bit of a brighter pink resin this time, and then dropping in that reddish pink. I'm hoping this will turn out a little less red. I also swirled the blue and white in the exact same way I did in the first pour. I didn't mention it, but Aphrodite was sometimes depicted as very gender fluid, so I thought it was really important to make this set both pink and blue. I'll have this reveal up next. The repour of this Aphrodite dice set definitely ended up being worth all the trouble. There was this really cool vortex effect in most of the dice because of the way the opaque and translucent elements mixed together. The angel hair looked so stunning in these little windows of the translucent resin. The pink was much more pink this time and much less red, which I loved. And the little blue clouds played really well together with the blue in the angel hair. And this really does feel like a perfectly blue and pink dice set. The gold feels very regal and elegant, which is exactly what I was hoping for. And even though the white didn't look exactly the same this time because the resin just wasn't as thick, I think the set is absolutely stunning. I knew that I wanted my Persephone dice set to be something really special, and so I had a really fun time making this little video to tease that upcoming set, showcasing all of the elements I decided to use in the Persephone dice set. This set is still my best-selling set of all time. Legend says that before Persephone was the goddess of the underworld, she was the goddess of spring growth, and she was considered an agricultural goddess alongside her mother Demeter. After she was kidnapped and brought to the underworld by her uncle Hades, she became his wife and therefore Queen of the Underworld. There is a lot of Persephone's myth that has to do with both death and rebirth, and I thought it would be really cool if her set was inspired by a garden of the underworld. I first began by laying down some green moss and little skull beads that I found. I put some dried purple flowers in the heads of the skulls, which I just thought looked really cool, and then I added red carnations to symbolize the pomegranate. There's a touch of both black and gold flake in this set, and I will be back with the reveal for you in the next video. This set is definitely fit for the Queen of the Underworld herself. Let me just tell you some of my favorite things about this set. Now, I know what you're thinking. The skulls are facing the low face, and obviously this happens because of the way I make my molds, but in this case, I actually really love it. I just feel like the skulls need to be facing the low number. It makes that natural one so much more satisfying, and I just think it kind of works with the set of dice and Persephone's fate and all of that. The red carnation really pops among all these other elements, which I think is so cool. And the moss is just a perfect juxtaposition to the skulls, and honestly, I'm in love with this set. Now that the dice set for the Queen of the Underworld is completed, I obviously have to do the king, Hades. A lot of you seem shocked to hear that Hades was Persephone's uncle, so wait until you hear that Hades was brother to both of her parents, both Zeus and Demeter, who were also siblings. For this dice set, I poured translucent black resin over gold flake and then added a little bit of red mylar into some dark gray swirls, which I then added on top of the red mylar as well because I wanted it to be a sort of peekaboo effect. I finished it all off by adding some more black alcohol ink directly into the mold, and I think you're really gonna love how this set turned out. If Persephone was my best-selling dice set of all time, you'll probably not be surprised to hear that Hades was my second best-selling dice set. This set just turned out so cool. It's equal vibes creepy, but also regal. I feel like there's this elegance to it. I feel like the red and the gold really lend itself to the fact that Hades also sort of held all of the wealth from Olympus down in the underworld. And I just think it turned out really super cool. Overall, this has been one of my most consistent sets from the Greek Mythology series, and I just love it. How have I gotten this far into the Greek Mythology series without making a set for Zeus? Well, this is remedied today. Zeus is considered the king of the gods, but he's also the god of thunder and the sky, and that's what I'm choosing to focus on today. I started by putting a little translucent resin in my mold and then adding glow-in-the-dark blue mica powder that currently looks white. I added this really fun yellow nail art that kind of looked a bit like Mylar before pipetting in some gray swirls, and adding just a drop of a darker blue alcohol ink directly into the mold. I'm trying to go with stormy vibes for this one, so we're gonna see how that turned out in the very next video. I'm back with the reveal of the Zeus dice, and the day I posted this reveal, I actually made everybody wait on it about an extra half a day because I needed darkness, and I'm going to show you why in just a minute. Overall, I was really happy with this dice set. They look super cool, and I loved the little flash of electricity from the nail art I put inside of them. I did try to improve on this design, however, but look at this glow. It just wasn't as sophisticated as I wanted, so I will be back in a future video to show you the new design on the Zeus dice set. For the repour of the Hera dice set, it did take me a little while to figure out how I wanted to update the design, but a lot of people in my comment section said that they wanted to see peacocks represented since they were one of Hera's symbols. The peacock feathers I found at Michael's were way too big, but I found other feathers that had the exact same coloring. I cut them up, dipped them in resin, and put them in the mold before topping them off with some clear resin. I added swirls of white, and then I added little flakes of gold. I just wanted to put one or two in each slot. I did still want to use a little red to represent the childbirth and motherhood aspect, so I added some swirls of red mica powder before adding a beautiful color-shifting red glitter. I had been hesitant to use peacock feathers in my new design of the Hera dice set, and I honestly don't know why, because they look so super cool. It is such a great idea to incorporate that as one of Hera's symbols, and I actually think they looked super cool up against the sort of red, pink, white, gold that I had going on for the rest of this design. Thank you so much to everybody who has watched the beginning of my Greek Mythology series here on YouTube. This is overwhelmingly one of the most successful dice series I have ever done on my other social media channels, and I'm so excited to finally be able to compile them all into a longer form video and just kind of have everything all in one place. If you liked this video, please leave me a comment and let me know which Greek gods you're hoping I will post next. If you liked this video, please click like. If you want to see more videos like this in the future, please click subscribe. And I will be back next Thursday with a continuation of my Greek gods dice series.